I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto the couch, letting out a long, exhausted sigh. Dropping Lisa off at the airport had been its usual hassle. The traffic was horrendous, she was running late, and she spent the entire ride snapping at me about everything. Her suitcase being too heavy, the coffee I had brought her being too cold, even the weather. Nothing was going right for her, and somehow, it was all my fault. But now, I was finally home, in the quiet, with nothing but the soft hum of the refrigerator in the background. I could finally breathe. The weight of the day had settled on my shoulders. I rubbed my temples, trying to ease the dull throbbing that had settled there, and trudged over to the kitchen. I poured myself a strong cup of coffee, hoping it would shake the exhaustion that seemed to grip every muscle in my body. I stood at the counter for a moment, sipping the coffee, staring blankly at the sink full of dirty dishes, trying to muster up the energy to care. But all I wanted was to sit down. Back on the couch, I grabbed my laptop and opened it, intending to scroll through some emails and unwind before figuring out what to do for dinner. I wasn't expecting anything exciting. Just the usual work emails, a few subscription services I should have unsubscribed from ages ago, and maybe some spam. The same mundane routine. But then I saw it. An email from Lisa's boss. That wasn't unusual in itself. She worked closely with Jay, and they often communicated about upcoming projects, trips, and meetings. But it was the subject line that stopped me dead in my tracks. "Can't wait to see you." My first reaction was confusion. It must be some sort of work thing, I thought. Something that wasn't intended for me to understand. But a nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach made me click on it. My hands were shaking slightly as I opened the email. I wish I hadn't. "Hey, sexy," the email began. "Just a reminder for your flight today. Don't forget to leave your panties at home like last time, and wear that black bra I love. Can't wait to get you in the hotel room later. Jay." The words blurred as my vision narrowed, and I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My mouth went dry, and I read it again, certain that I had misread it, that there was some logical explanation. There wasn't. I slammed the laptop shut, but the damage was already done. My hands shook uncontrollably as I sat there, my mind racing, trying to make sense of what I had just read. Lisa and Jay? It couldn't be real. Maybe it was some kind of sick joke. Maybe this wasn't even meant for her. But I knew deep down that it was. The realization settled like a stone in my chest, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to throw up. My wife of 10 years, the woman I had built a life with, the person I trusted more than anyone in the world, was cheating on me. The thought was too much to bear. I felt the room spin around me, and I pressed my hands into my face, willing the nausea to pass. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe this wasn't what it seemed. But even as I tried to convince myself, the certainty grew. I needed to know for sure. With trembling hands, I opened the laptop again, this time determined to dig deeper. I scrolled through her inbox, my heart pounding with each click, and then I saw it, a folder labeled Personal. My breath caught in my throat as I hesitated. I knew what I was about to do, what I was about to find, but I couldn't stop myself. I clicked on the folder, and what I saw confirmed my worst fears. Dozens of emails, hundreds of them, all between Lisa and Jay. Some of them were explicit. Some were just flirtatious, teasing exchanges. But they all pointed to the same thing, an affair. They had been sneaking around for months, meeting up in hotels during business trips, exchanging gifts and intimate messages, planning their next rendezvous. Every email I read was another dagger in my chest. The bile rose in my throat, and I rushed to the bathroom, barely making it in time as I retched into the toilet. I felt like my entire world had just been pulled out from under me, and I was left flailing in the dark, grasping at nothing. When I finally pulled myself together, I went back to the laptop, my hands still shaking. I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that this was really happening. So I printed every email, every single disgusting, incriminating email. The printer whirred and clicked, spitting out page after page of betrayal. I stood there, numb, as the pages piled up around me. By the time the printer ran out of ink, I was surrounded by a sea of crumpled paper, each one a reminder that the life I thought I had was over. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and chugged it down, hoping the alcohol would numb the pain, but it didn't. Nothing would. The shrill ring of my phone cut through the silence, making me jump. I glanced at the screen and saw Lisa's name. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But no. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Not over the phone. I needed to see her face when I did it. So I answered, forcing my voice to remain calm. "Hey, babe," I said, trying to sound normal. "Hey," she chirped on the other end. "Just checking in. The flight was fine, but they messed up my hotel reservation. I had to argue with the front desk for like an hour." I barely heard her words. My mind was spinning, still caught on the emails, the images of her and Jay together flashing through my mind. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her I knew everything, but I didn't. "That sucks," I said flatly, not really caring about her hotel mix-up. She went on for a while, complaining about the flight, the food, the people, everything. It was the same as always. But this time, I saw her for who she really was. Someone who had been lying to me for who knows how long. "I'll be home in a couple of days," she said cheerfully before we hung up. Yeah, I thought darkly. We'll deal with this in person. The next few days were a blur. I tried to go about my normal routine, going to work, focusing on my tasks, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't shake the images of Lisa and Jay together. Every time I thought about it, my stomach twisted into knots, and my chest felt tight. When the weekend finally rolled around, I couldn't wait any longer. Lisa's flight was set to land in the evening, and I waited for her to come home, the stack of emails ready on the coffee table. My heart pounded in my chest as I heard the sound of her car pulling into the driveway. This was it. The front door opened, and there she was, walking into the house with a smile on her face. "Hey, babe, I'm home," she called, setting her bags down by the door. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "Hey!" She must have sensed something was off because her smile faltered, and she frowned. "Kevin? What's wrong?" Without a word, I grabbed the stack of emails and hurled them across the room. The papers scattered in the air, landing at her feet like a storm of betrayal. Her face went white as she stared down at the papers, then back at me. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "You tell me," I snarled, taking a step toward her. "You've been screwing your boss, Lisa. How long? How long have you been lying to me?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't deny it. She didn't even try. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not what I think?" I laughed bitterly. "So you haven't been sneaking around with Jay? You haven't been meeting him in hotels while I'm at home like an idiot, trusting you?" She opened her mouth to say something, but at that moment, her phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen. Jay's name flashed across it. I saw red. "Don't bother answering," I spat. "Just pack your shit and get out. We're done." Lisa stared at me in disbelief, her lips trembling as if she was going to say something. But no words came. Finally, she nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She turned and walked toward the bedroom, her steps slow and heavy. An hour later, she was gone. The house felt empty after she left. Quiet. Too quiet. I spent the next few days in a haze, trying to make sense of everything. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. All I could do was replay everything in my head, over and over, until I thought I might go insane. I drank to forget, but it didn't help. Nothing did. As the days turned into weeks, I tried to move on. I filed for divorce. I signed the papers. I packed up the last of Lisa's things and shipped them to her new apartment. I erased every trace of her from my life. Or at least, I tried. But no matter how hard I tried, the memories lingered. I spent a lot of time alone, lost in my thoughts. The betrayal was like a wound that wouldn't heal, constantly festering, refusing to close. Then, one day, I ran into Sarah. We hadn't seen each other since high school, but it felt like no time had passed. She was bright and cheerful, just like I remembered. Talking to her was like a breath of fresh air, a break from the suffocating darkness I had been living in. We started meeting up regularly after that. Coffee, dinner, walks. It was nice. For the first time in months, I felt like I was coming up for air. Sarah was different from Lisa. She was kind, patient, and understanding. She didn't push me to talk about what had happened, but she was there when I needed someone to listen. Slowly but surely, I began to heal. But just when I thought I was finally moving on, I got the call. It was Lisa's father. "Kevin, it's Lisa," he said, his voice heavy with grief. "She's gone." I froze, the phone slipping from my hand. Lisa was dead. I couldn't believe it. Despite everything, despite the pain and the betrayal, I hadn't expected this. The funeral was small, just family and close friends. I went, even though I wasn't sure I should. I stood at her graveside, staring down at the coffin, and for the first time in months, I cried. Lisa had hurt me in ways I couldn't even begin to describe. But now she was gone, and all I could think about was what we had lost. Life went on, as it always does. Slowly, I began to rebuild. Sarah and I grew closer, and eventually, I realized that what we had was something real, something worth fighting for. We got married in a small ceremony, just us and a few close friends. It was simple, but it was perfect. As I stood at the altar, looking into Sarah's eyes, I knew that despite everything I had been through, I had found happiness again. Life is messy, unpredictable, and sometimes it's downright cruel. But if I've learned anything, it's that there is always hope, always a chance to start over, to rebuild, and to find happiness. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be.